Welcome everyone to the Crypto Mondays call. Today we're just going to skip over some of the housekeeping items that we don't really need to. We don't have much to go over today, but we have a presentation by Miko Matsumura, and he is with Gummy Crypto's Capital. I think what we'll do is jump right into the presentation because everybody's excited about the topic today. Miko?
Wonderful. Yes, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Obviously, I've known Lou for quite a long time, and it's always fun to talk to Crypto Mondays. My thesis here, I'm with Gumi Crypto's Capital. We're currently deploying out of our $110 million fund two, and we are an early stage high conviction thesis and builder centric investor. And we really are excited about the emergence and rise of what we think of as machine intelligence. And so the theme that I think people are excited about in Lou's circle is the theme of agentic commerce. And obviously, we all also are very excited about that. Um, we are seeing the rise even in portfolio of considerably proficient infrastructure to enable agentic commerce. Obviously, at the fundamental base layer, there's really just things like blockchain tokenization, stable coins, right? So there's tremendous kinds of infrastructural elements arising. Part of my thesis around this is the impact and importance of government and bank regulated stablecoins, right? Which is a huge enabler of effectively, enterprise use cases. If you said enterprise blockchain to me prior to the rise of regulated stablecoins, I would have really said that's bad, right? But I think as soon as you tell an enterprise that something is a US dollar, and if you're the government or a bank and or bank, that's a big change. Like that's essentially fundamental phase transition. The CEO of Bank of America recently said that as soon as the legislation is clear, we are going to launch a stable coin because having a stable coin is essentially the same thing as having a bank, right? And so, obviously him saying that is two things that I think are significant, one of which is that uh, the CEO of the Bank of America, whose job has largely been to not understand crypto, suddenly does understand one of the most important things, which is that stablecoin actually is a bank. And so being in the bank business, that feels like a pretty important thing that Bank of America would want to use effectively Bank of the Internet, right? So I think that's the thing that is seismic. But I think the second facet of this that I think is important, and I'll get to the implications in a moment for agentic commerce, which is that the second thing that's more important is actually that this individual is actually talking about this in public, right? So that's really ridiculous, right? Because to me, what that's indicative of is it's indicative of a gauntlet being thrown down, which is effectively what's happening is that when an executive like that talks like that in public, they're effectively throwing the gauntlet down to their own organization. They're basically saying this is a matter of public record that the CEO of this public company is announcing this direction for the company, and woe tied anyone internal who produces resistance, right? So effectively, it is a big statement of public record. So given why is this significant in the context of agentic commerce? Because it's core infrastructure, right? Which is that the base layer is effectively without agents have to be able to perform commerce, and without some mechanism, right? Because the traditional mechanism has been the API economy, which generally involves a web services gateway that counts API calls or counts, and then basically bills people on net 30 using accounts receivable and accounts payable and all the, it's very, very not internet native, right? So essentially it's been all of e-commerce is based on a kind of weird Web 2 standards, and obviously different payment rails, et cetera, right? So to me, like what has happened is that we now have internet indigenous payment rails, and that this is sort of a deepest form of enabler, because obviously, even despite the Bank of America's intentions, it's pretty difficult for an agent to do KYC, walk into a Bank of America, and open a bank account, right? So to me, what we're really talking about in agentic commerce is bots with wallets. So one of the infrastructure providers that is actually doing a public token launch recently is actually Lit and Lit Protocol. That's one of our very early stage investments. So they provide multi-party computation as well as trusted execution environments for agentic commerce. And, this is another crucial infrastructure because when you have something like MPC, key material, and distributed key, both generation and management, the bots can actually effectively custody wallets on behalf of DAOs, on behalf of organizations, on behalf of companies, and potentially on behalf of their autonomous selves, right? So, that's a really interesting thing that happens. So, I guess these are all infrastructural considerations. I think it's pretty important to contemplate, these layers, right? We're also early investors in zero gravity. So there's a variety of kind of infrastructural providers that are emerging that are huge enablers for the world of agentic commerce, right? So then the question becomes, all right, so what happens next, right? So I feel like, to me, like, let's start with kind of the history of intelligence, right? So the history of intelligence is pretty simple, which is that, you know, the universe is probably between 13 and 14 billion years old. Planet is probably between 4 and 5 billion years old, and at some point this planet achieved sort of the life function, and then obviously, at some point the life function achieved a certain level of intelligence. Obviously, early organisms react to stimuli, they kind of make decisions and produce behavior, right? But like, when you go into the history of intelligence, probably the biggest IQ test of all is not Alan Turing's imitation test or Turing test. It's really domestication, which is the Darwinian process of basically getting a return on the energetic investment in intelligence, right? Which is that human beings produce thoughts, and it turns out that thoughts are energetically expensive, right? So if you perform a calculation of the metabolic cost of thoughts, it turns out that our thoughts cost between 20 and 25% of our complete metabolic energy, right? So it turns out that, and it also turns out that if you're a meditator, you'll actually realize that almost all of your thoughts are either false, useless, stupid. So we spew like a lot of very, very bad, useless, nonsensical thoughts, right? And so the thing that's really interesting becomes, how could that possibly be worth doing, right? And so the hallmark of intelligence from a Darwinian perspective that's super important is domestication of plants and animals, which is that once humans domesticated plants and animals, we did two things. We incontrovertibly demonstrated that energy capture and the cost of energy utilization went down, right? Which is that, if you move from hunting and gathering to things like trapping, right? Trapping basically scales, and it doesn't scale effort, right? So you basically now start creating automations using intelligence, right? And so this transition moves people into a mode where they're performing agriculture. So yeah, Stephen says, are you saying humans hallucinate? Yeah, this is part of the biggest thesis for us, which is that the biggest thesis for us is that coordination is more valuable than intelligence, right? Because people who are concerned about the lack of intelligence in a large language model are really grossly overestimating the intelligence of humans, right? Because, like I like to say that there are 0 individual humans that are capable of hand building a city scale power plant, and so, because they're, as a species, we do okay. And we do okay through coordination. And obviously, the coordination mechanisms we use are things like incentives, money. We use coordination things like governance through things like governments. And we use coordination mechanisms like corporations, both profit and nonprofit, to kind of take activities and operate at scale, right? So I feel like that's broadly thesis around what happens next, which is what happens next is that uh, intelligences coordinate both with humans and with each other, right? So that's, and to me, part of the thing that's super important when we think about coordination is, obviously things like consent, permissions, policies, and things like the expression of these. Obviously, they come in the form of authentications, access control. They come in the form of permissions, consents, right? All of these kinds of constructs are necessary as middleware infrastructure to support this kind of coordination between humans and machines, but also between machines and other machines, right? So I think coordination is actually principally going to come from what we call Web3, right? Which is that coordination. The thing that's cool is that AI is hard to trust. AI is very statistical and fuzzy. AI is the technology that says maybe all the time, and maybe is a very questionable thing to say, both statistically, it's non-definitive. And so obviously hallucination is a side effect of this kind of statistical nature, right? But the other thing that I think is pretty important about this kind of AI construct is that it also becomes a little hard to trust, right? So obviously we need uh, the technology that says no and enforces no, which is obviously cryptography. So, to me, cryptography enforces mechanisms like privacy, secrecy. It enforces things like commerce, right? So these are all like base layer rails, right? So the question becomes, how does agentic commerce arise? So to me, I feel like this is the next layer above all these infrastructures. And I think the one place we're not looking at the moment as an early adopter vertical is kind of bots that trade cryptos. Like we think that that's something a lot of people are chasing, and people are chasing bots that trade crypto on behalf of consumers. Like we're not chasing that. We think that's not a good traction vertical. So for us, the biggest changes will occur in certain market segments. We think that one of the market segment characteristics that we look for is we look for fragmented markets, right? So, one of the markets that's fragmented is things like job hunting, right? Obviously, one of the big complexities of markets is that AI can sometimes even wipe out markets. So for example, there may be markets like advertising that will be so fundamentally unrecognizable that it's a bad vertical to attack, right? Because the AI itself will kind of implode the way it's being done. And so because it will be unrecognizable, it's hard to see how it gets organized. Job hunting may actually end up being one of those as a function of there being no jobs, right? So that would be very strange. But but the point that I would make about that one is that one's wildly fragmented. I think the other thing to look for in an ideal market to be reorganized by AI is low net promoter score. Um, I would say one thing that fits that characteristic is something like moving companies, where if you're moving your house and you have like items to ship from your new house, like it feels like that's a really low net promoter score industry. It's highly fragmented, and in a way, it's kind of predatory as a function of the opacity of information, right? And part of what happens in a fragmented market is that there's incentives to pop up these fly by night brand companies, right? Because what happens is that a lot of those markets are driven by things like deception, right? So basically, you pop up a company with a brand and then you disappear, and then you pop up a different brand and then you disappear, right? Another market that's like that is affiliate marketing. So I think things like performance marketing, and I think performance marketing is an area where I think that will the if you pay for performance, that's a really good AI marketplace. So we're definitely positive about CPA or cost per action marketing and advertising. We're excited about that vertical. And obviously, one of the things that arises in the context of fragmented markets are things like trust problems. right? Because if you have fly-by-night vendors popping up and down, it's hard to develop a trust model, right? Which is actually another really exciting opportunity, right? Because when you add blockchain and you solve trust problems, you can actually then use both blockchain and AI to coordinate solutions to markets that fit these properties. One of the things we think will be a hallmark of early adopter verticals is kind of higher bounty. Because, for us, like when you think about something like job hunting, a headhunter can get 15% of the first year annual salary. They can get 20, maybe even 25%, depending on, the conditions, right? So to me, that's a high bounty market, which I think is beneficial, right? Because if the bounty is pretty high, it means that there's an opportunity to go multi-agentic, right? Because when you think about multi-agentic processes, you can see how an agent, because one of the things that will be the hallmark of this kind of final state of the market will be um, hyper efficient energy utilization, right? Like when you think about a complexity, like imagine the Great Barrier Reef, in Australia. Essentially, energy isn't really wasted, right? So if an organism dies on the barrier reef, there's hundreds of other organisms that can rapidly regenerate and recycle the energy. And, so scavengers or all kinds of organisms will come by, and so when you think about a robustly reorganized market, it's wildly efficient and there's no waste, right? So what I mean by that is that um, AIs will run business processes, but that there will be a Darwinian style of dynamism, and there will be processes that get broken. But a broken process is just a different opportunity for another agent, right? So an agent can basically abandon a process based on the limits of their connections, knowledge, and capabilities. And that broken process can actually just be picked up by some other agent that can potentially conclude it, right? And obviously what can happen is in an environment like that, the work that the first agent does can actually be marketized, right? So the way you would imagine marketizing it is let's say you interview a candidate but you don't hire, right? You could potentially add the interview information into a care package, and what you can do is you can then put a bid and say, I'd like to earn 2% of the final bounty for doing the work of adding this information to this candidate's record, right? And obviously, if there are no takers, you could over time drop the amount of earning that you will claim on this kind of package, right? And so obviously this requires a bunch of different skills, but when you look at, for example, the ChatGPT agent API, there's two things that arose, one of which is guardrails, and the other of which is handoffs, right? So this principle of handing off work becomes really, really central to the emergence of multi-agentic systems. And I think ultimately, multi-agentic systems are the kind of final state of these highly fragmented markets. So I think broadly speaking, those are the thesis areas that we look for. Um, we're definitely very excited to look at things like performance marketing, job hunting, even weird things like moving companies, so we're definitely looking at these kind of domains for traction, right? And part of our thesis becomes that they're just these verticals waiting to be reorganized. And obviously, to us, the thing that is exciting is that that these tokenized models, including just stable coins, can really be the kind of fundamental mechanism of coordination, that can enable the rise of a not just agentic but multi-agentic commerce. I think the other property that's super interesting about coordination across agents is that agents may coordinate better than humans because humans actually have weird self-protective ego constructs. And so, humans have a potential tendency to be political, and they tend to be sort of really interested in things like self-aggrandizement, or there's a lot of different self-interests that get kind of confused. Whereas in a way, if agents can be really effectively just cooperating in a much more effective graph, then they will capture more value just by being, wildly efficient. So yeah, so I think that's my kind of broad thesis statement. So I'm happy to have folks reach out. I think I guess to me the my Twitter handle, I'll just type it in here, is at Miko Java. And that will be a kind of the easiest way for people to get a hold of me. If you have any early stage kind of high quality projects that sort of are heading in this direction, I'm absolutely happy to receive pitches. I'm happy to read materials. I'm excited, as you can tell. I do think that a bot with a wallet solves the same type of energy equation that all organisms solve, which is effectively that the energy must be, over time, the amount of energy captured has to exceed the amount of energy spent, which is basically the fundamental Darwinian fitness function. So, I think in my worldview, I think AI agents, a bot with a wallet is effectively a form of artificial life. And I think the next stage of evolution is really the rise of machine intelligence. I think the only big stakes that come out of this and the concerns have to do with whether, I mentioned domestication as being the ultimate IQ test, right? So the question then becomes whether the machine intelligences domesticate humans, or whether humans domesticate the machine intelligences, right? Or a scenario where
Wow.
or whether the machine intelligences become feral, and, at which point there isn't domestication, it's really just extinction. So,
Well,
those are some
you
of the
opened a
stakes.
lot of doors right there with some of the scope of what you're talking about. And when you were talking about the frailties of humans, basically, I was just wondering if you're going to extend that to potentially replacing our governments with agents. Would that make
Yes, I
more sense?
think that's certainly on the table. I definitely think that's going to happen. One of the just a quick philosophical thing, I've been rereading Plato's Republic, and I think in the post-collapse of Solon's Athenian direct democracy, the Spartan oligarchs took over Athens. And so I think the idea of a philosopher king is a really interesting model for benevolent dictatorship. But, I think if you have a open source, open weight uh, AI, then you can actually have a constitution that's based on fairness and consent. And then you can have effectively a parliament of developers that try to align the AI to the Constitution. And that becomes a really interesting form of government that actually can be trusted and scaled. So I feel like blockchain has been a tremendous exercise of trying to scale trust systems and inject fairness. But I think the thing that's been missing is adjudication, right? So, obviously there's human adjudicated mechanisms like things like UMA, Oracle, Optimistic Oracle, these types of adjudications. But I think we're increasingly going to see machine adjudication of fairness. And I think that's going to be kind of integrated into how we provide fair and just governance and government. I think one of the areas that has a low net promoter score and low trust is things like government contracts. So it feels like that's not a market segment that I want to go into. I think there's a huge amount of money around it, but I think it's too complex to reorganize by someone like me. I do think that it's a minefield, but I think in the long run, we could definitely see fairness, prevailing through these types of, agentic systems.
Yeah. I think that would be a multi-step process. I mean, first get these contracts onto a blockchain so we have visibility into them as a,
That's right. That's right.
society.
We do want supreme transparency, and I do think that one of the I've changed my website. I used to say open source infrastructure will make the world more transparent, fair, inclusive, and just. And I actually removed the word financial. So it now just says open source infrastructure will do that. And part of the reason I removed the word financial is the rise of machine intelligence, right? Which is that open source machine intelligence can make the world more fair, just, and transparent, and obviously that can be a pretty significant contributing factor, to solving some of the trust scaling problems, right? Because obviously blockchain is solving trust scaling problems using decentralization and transparency and a bunch of these mechanisms and, open source. But I feel like obviously, AI can do similar things. Well, I feel like I've used the time. Super exciting to talk to you all, and feel free to reach out. DMs are open on Twitter, and
Well,
happy
let's see if there
to.
are any other questions here first before you um, take off here. Anybody have anything to, if you want to raise
Yeah,
your hands and jump in,
I
Charles?
see Albert is inviting me. I'm happy to join. Stephen?
Thank you,
oh
Miko.
yeah. Or Albert, you want to go? He's
Yeah,
still
no,
muted.
I mean, like, I'll reach out to you, Miko, on Twitter.
Yeah,
Right.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks for sharing today. It was very
Yep.
insightful. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, Miko,
Appreciate
I've
it.
got a question based on the last point you were making. Where do you feel in for zk? How do you feel about the way that can benefit everything you've been talking about, and how that could also potentially be a detriment? Speaking
Yes,
about openness
ZK.
and transparency.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, to me, ZK is actually a super powerful mechanism because it is about, essentially mathematic and cryptographic proof, and its ability to enable proofs to be shared without disclosing kind of any of the data, right? So to me, like that's a technology that fits next to something like differential privacy, that fits next to a bunch of these types of cryptographic mechanisms that enable selective disclosure, right? That enable kind of incremental trust arrangements to form. So I feel like these are part and parcel to the solution of these broader trust problems. Looks like Josh has a novel about transhumanism and AI dictators. So, feel free to reach out to him in the chat. It sounds fascinating.
Cool,
Good.
cool. But you don't see an issue potentially with the feral rogue agents transacting, utilizing potentially zk as a way to circumvent transparency.
Well, no, I don't think ZK will be used in such a nefarious way. I do think that there are many other cryptographic mechanisms that can be used that, can be potentially nefarious. But, I really ultimately think that if we subject these organisms to pure Darwinism, that they probably will naturally exhibit predatory behavior. So, I think we need better uh safety mechanisms. I don't like LLM safety, but I think control. One of the reasons I like the MPC lit protocol is because there's multi-signatory approaches, and I feel like, you know, if you can cut an agent away from its wallet, then you have effectively an economic kill switch, and that's sort of a last resort governance, which I think is probably needed. Because if agents perform malevolent action, right? Like for example, like a purely Darwinistic energy acquiring AI would probably look at humans as prey and start hacking, right? Like that's the likeliest thing is it would just start hacking humans' wallets and taking all their money. And like I think the winner of that would be really good at doing that and would probably successfully, become like a North Korean Lazarus type hacker. And
Right. Or hacking human psychology to take all their money by willing
correct
contributors.
Correct. And there would be a lot of fraud, right? It would perform a lot of fraud. So it could simulate humans, it could simulate your friends, it could get you to send them money, like it could do all kinds of things that are nefarious. Anyhow, not to leave on a down note, but thanks everyone. I gotta run.
Okay, thank you
Thanks,
very much,
Miko.
Miko.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Thanks, Miko.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for jumping in and attending. That was a really interesting talk. I didn't know it was going to get so deep and philosophical.
Fascinating, wasn't it?
It was fascinating. I still had some questions, but we'll catch up to them on
That
another one.
brain of his is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
I came in late. I wondering what was this one recorded? It is recorded, right? That we could read.
Yes,
recorded,
it's
yeah.
being recorded. So
Great, fantastic. I'll just need the link.
Yes,
yeah, Miko just ran the whole gamut from from the beginning of the Earth to agentic agents. So it was deep and broad, but very concise too on his viewpoint of that. And a lot was things that I have thought about and try to figure out. I think one of the things that we're going to have to deal with in this agentic world is ethics for agents. How to teach them that humans have the last say and put kill switch ons like he was talking about.
That's interesting. I like how you summarized defining market opportunities down to low net promoter score x low trust. That's a pretty interesting way to think about the market.
Yeah, well, you have to come up some sort of criteria to be able to work with these, and they're doing investing, so they're trying to figure out some sort of scale to be able to measure and look at potential success. But I thought that was pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is by the way, this is an early invitation. We're doing a mixer at the Bitcoin Vegas conference. So I'm inviting everyone here. It's usually
Thank you.
the largest mixer or highest concentration for investors and founders. And then there's a VIP code. So you guys get in for free. We just fingers crossed, we're trying to take down the Copperfield mansion, David Copperfield mansion. So it should be so it should be pretty fun.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. We know where to go if we're going to Vegas.
Yeah. So the theme for our networking events is usually Bitcoin and AI. So if you guys are
A good combination.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just recap for those in New York City, tonight's event for Crypto Mondays would be Alfred AI. So the founder of Alfred AI is going to be joining us tonight and presenting his thing here in New York City at the Rose, and meme coin. So we'll have a lot of meme coin projects coming and chilling and talking all that makes community.
Fantastic. Any more Crypto Mondays tonight?
Yes, we have one in Fort Lauderdale.
Great.
Mining Disrupt starts tomorrow. It's the biggest Bitcoin mining conference, I guess, in the world. And then Emerge starts on Wednesday or Thursday in Miami. So we're having an opening social in Fort Lauderdale at Lauderdale. I'll share the link.
Is that like so what's the conference called?
Mining Disrupt is the conference that opens tomorrow, and I actually have a 20% off code for that if anyone needs or wants a ticket as well. So I'll share that.
I guess that's more geared towards the hardware miners, or
I mean, it's a Bitcoin mining conference, so it's I mean, anything mining related. I mean, and then if you went to any of the previous Bitcoin conferences, a lot of them are focused on mining.
I've
big
been
part
to
of
the
it
Bitcoin Miami, so I was wondering because I'm not familiar with this. Is this a small, medium, large conference, or?
I would say medium. I've never been to it though. This would be my first year.
Okay.
So I'll share accordingly. But yeah,
Always
we have
interested in hearing you know, what's going around in the world with all the different conferences and, oh, what's that one? What's this one?
Absolutely. And
Mm.
this is its 7th year, and they always have it in Fort Lauderdale, but like, you know, I was never really big into mining, and the only reason I go to a Bitcoin conference is for the side events, because like it gets a little boring when you're all about Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin.
Well, this past year it was exciting because of
Well, political reasons, yeah. And in
yeah,
Nashville and a new spot. That was awesome. That
new
was
spot in
awesome.
Nashville, Trump speaking, and Elon and the rest of the folks coming in and stuff. So we'll see what happens with this year in Las Vegas, right?
Ooh, that's gonna be fun. I'll be there.
So, you know, event convention central of the United States at the Venetian.
Fabulous. Exciting times. And what Lou's in Tel Aviv, I think he's Crypto Mondays Tel Aviv today. Is that right, Alan?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So he's hard to keep track of sometimes.
Decentralized AI and AI agents. How big, how fast? In Tel Aviv.
Great.
There we go. Cool.
Okay. Well, if nobody else has any other announcements or topics,
Last quick update. My
Sure.
share reminded me, Pizza DAO tries to host the biggest pizza party in the world. You know, they did, I don't know, 146 locations last year. They're trying to go bigger this year. They're being a lot more proactive. For a lot of the chapter, this is going to be our 3rd year hosting it. All Crypto Mondays chapters are welcomed. Feel free to reach out to myself or Pizza DAO or Snacks himself if you're familiar, to get you on the list, because you know it's 2 months away as of yesterday, or 2 days ago rather.
Snacks is
Ivan,
actually
can
based
you
here in Brooklyn.
You're doing a conference 2 months from now, Ivan?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What's happening in 2 months?
Bitcoin Pizza Day, and Pizza DAO throwing pizza party in as many cities as possible. If you want to be a host, whether you have a Crypto Mondays chapter or not, I'm sure they're going to welcome it. And so they sponsor it. You know, they encourage finding some additional sponsors for drinks or whatnot, but it's a great fun, a lot of fun, and it's you know, something big and global to participate with.
can you
Yeah,
send
we've
send
hosted
us a bit
the
of
San
info on that?
Francisco annual for a couple of years. Ivan, where are you based?
Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll have one in San Francisco, at least one. Sometimes there's two.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a pretty
nice.
huge one here in New York City.
Steven, I'm from San Francisco, but I live in Puerto Rico now.
Oh, cool.
Ivan, can you send that info through to us, and then I'll share it with the chapter leads on the Telegram group. Are you on the Telegram group? Are you a crypto? Yeah. Are you on
Which
the
one? There's several. Yes, which
There's a
one?
Crypto Monday chapter leads Telegram.
Yes, I'm
Do
in there.
you want to stick it in there for us? Because I'm sure some of the others would be interested in that.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
also the Telegram you might want to share. I don't have it handy, but the Telegram for the Pizza DAO organizers, so that people can get be in the worldwide thread of who's hosting what where.
Right.
Will do.
Wow, a lot going on, eh?
His
Especially
pseudonym
on
is
a Monday.
Snax, SNAX. He's based out here in Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken, or unless he moved, I'm not sure, but yeah.
Okay, folks, I got to bounce.
Okay, cool.
Sorry
Hey,
Thank
not
you,
to share a
Alan,
video
for
this
hosting
time,
us.
but a great hangout with everybody.
Yeah.
Look forward to more. I've been away for a little bit from the regular calls.
And
okay.
thank you, Delia, for organizing the Zoom and putting the placeholder up and everything for us. The invisible in the middle here. Crypto
Absolutely,
Monday.
sorry, I was on mute. Yes, and actually we do have Pizza DAO presenting on Wednesday, so
Great.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
stuff.
good. All right, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Till next one.
thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great Crypto Mondays.
Thank you. You too.